Hello and welcome to the Memory Capsule podcast, where we interview members of the Pokemon trading card game community. My name is Rafal Gladys. Each week, we'll be speaking with our guests about their background with the Pokemon TCG, how they got involved with the game, and give them an opportunity to share their love of the game. Today's guest is Harrison Burch. Harrison is a Worlds invitee who has recently become known as an expert on decks involving Arceus Vstar. Harrison has half a dozen Day 2 finishes, playing both meta decks and innovative archetypes. He has recently gotten into the streaming game and credits Pokemon for being one of the most important factors for why he overcame great obstacles in his life, a subject that we will discuss in this episode. How you doing, Harrison?
Very good. Thank you very much for having me.
Of course. For any of our listeners who are not yet familiar with you, is there anything that I maybe left out? Anything you'd like them to know about you?
No, that's perfect. I hope to have some big finishes coming soon. I think Pokemon players in general can relate to we're never content. We're quite frustrated when we lose, and I think we all could practice a little more. I don't know, a little more grace with ourselves. Like we're all killing it. We're all doing a better job often than we give ourselves credit for. The game is so sick sometimes with the variance. There's nothing you can do about it. So I am proud. I'm proud of what I've done. That's about it. But I know I got some bigger finishes coming. I know it.
For sure. Hopefully, we're all rooting for you, and yeah, I mean that's already a really really good point for anybody listening who is looking to improve as a player. One of the things I've realized myself is that sometimes you just have to look back and reflect on, well, where was I as a player a year ago? Maybe I didn't make top 8 at a cup this last weekend, but would I have made top 16 at a cup a year or two ago? You have to always be looking back at where you used to be and where you are now.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to start off by just asking you a question we ask all of our guests, which is, what is your favorite card of all time and why?
Yeah, if you've been playing even a couple years, especially more, that is tough. There's so many great ones. I think, given some of the stuff we're going to talk about, the full art Buzzwole GX, both the design, the attacks, everything about it. I was able to get my World's Invite 2018 pretty much on the shoulders, the big beefy shoulders of that Buzzwole. I just loved it. I felt so good with it. Uh, I worked hard getting some points with it, and like while I was having success with it, to kind of like bling a Buzzwole deck out. These shiny energies and the all full art Pokemon, reverse hollow Brooklet Hills. And my best finish ever with Buzzrock at a regional, I left the full deck behind and drove home. And that was
Really?
so sad. So I love that deck. My friends were angels. They helped me back home in Michigan. I've been in Nashville now for some time, but Michigan friends helped me replace it, not the fully blinged version. So yeah, that will always be very special to me. I've still loved Buzzwole, and then this was before I found fitness and stuff. But I'm sure we'll probably talk about it too. But I got into powerlifting later, and so that gave me a special, just a silly love for him flexing on the haters. He's such a funny, yeah. The gifts of Buzzwole, it's just a funny looking Pokemon, and that full art, I think, is just awesome with him flexing.
For sure. Yeah, the Ultra Beasts being like basically aliens. Like I don't know if they ever like really they're like interdimensional aliens. Like who even knows the lore of the Ultra Beasts really? But yeah, it's definitely a goofy Pokemon. I don't know how many people might look at it and be like, "Oh, that's a Pokemon," just at first glance, right? But it's like little mannerisms are so funny. I love the all the flexing it does. You were saying that you got your first World's Invite in 2018. When did you first get involved with the game?
Late 2014, 2015. Me and my friends, God, I just have loved Pokemon forever. I played a lot of card games. None of them did it for me like Pokemon. And that's early on I learned like it's not just card game strategy games that I'm into, although that's part of my interest. It was specifically that it was Pokemon. I came up on the video games. I loved I was also a little artistic as a kid. I don't do anything like it anymore, but I used to draw and I loved drawing sprites. I just loved the look of all Pokemon. They were so cool. Um, and so lifelong player, everything, Pokemon Stadium, Coliseum. 2014-15, me and my friends were doing this weekly Pokemon night, and one day we just started talking about the cards, and we're like, why, random collections some of us have in our basements and stuff. Why haven't we looked at cards recently? We had just been playing the games, and we were getting into singles or like VGC, And then one of us was like, it was late at night. We were hungry. We wanted to go pick up. We used to do these $5 pizzas from Speedway gas station, which sounds disgusting, but
Oh
like
God.
they were easy and cheap, and we get our beverages. Speedway was awesome. We're like, let's just go a little farther to Walmart and pick up some theme decks, and we've seen those at the store. Let's try them. So, and we had an absolute blast. We're like, we don't even really know what we're doing. Um, and we just fell in love with it. And like a lot of us had collected as kids, but definitely then we didn't know there even were rules. But so to find it as kind of young adults, um, and like learn how to play the game, and it was just that was one of the funnest nights ever. I'll never forget it. We stayed up super late with just those silly theme decks, and within month over month it was just like rapid. We all started picking up different staples, and I mean, I don't know the timeline. Within 6 months to a year, we were watching, Puka and Jay-Wits and content creators and someone's PC and six prizes. Like we couldn't consume it quick enough after just starting on theme decks.
Hmm. Is there like a league or a community you were able to become part of? I know you said, were you in Michigan at that point as well? Because I know Michigan, I know the Szymanskis are from there. I guess I don't know too
Yeah.
much about the Michigan player community.
Oh, it's awesome. So yeah, we with 14, 15, we buy those theme decks. We don't know that exists. I don't know what regionals are. I don't know. I think one of my friends had kind of knew it existed for the video game, and maybe he was the first to bring it up that like there's big tournaments for this. But we had a card store in my hometown of Traverse City. It's 4 hours north of Detroit, and they did a very casual Pokemon night. And so I had no frame of reference for like a league or whatever, and I think it just came down to like getting a part of Facebook groups or something like that. Maybe some kind of like YouTube to Verbank pipeline that made me find like, oh, there are Michigan players, and maybe that's where I first heard Szymanski's, or um, it started having us look around, and yeah, and then somehow we learned there were leagues in Lansing, Bay City, and Detroit. Those were kind of or around Detroit. Those were the first to go to, and Lansing was the first. Like, oh, like there are good players in this game. Alex Hill, Chris DeRocher, and the Szymanskis were like our first kind of icons in the game. Like we were watching YouTubers, but they didn't seem real. Going to a Lansing, they had a Michigan State University kind of Pokemon club, and yeah, showing up to that and getting destroyed by them, the Szymanskis were like, oh, that's what it's like to be really good. And um, yeah, sorry, I kind of forgot the question.
Oh, you're
Is
good. No, I was
Lansing
just
and Detroit?
asking, like,
Yeah.
yeah, like how'd you find like your Pokemon playing community beyond just your friend group?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I'm sure it was Facebook groups, and yeah, Detroit and Lansing were the first where we started branching out, and yeah, meeting some other people who played the game competitively.
Around that time is when I was personally taking a bit of like a break from the game. So was this still when like competitive events were kind of like a seasonal thing? You still had like your states, your cities, your battle roads, or was this now cups and challenges?
Um, yeah, the timeline for me gets fuzzy as well. I know right when I made that change of like not playing rogue, playing a competitive archetype I got off of some Facebook group, or maybe 16, 15. I did like one states, and then it was switching to cups and challenges. So
Gotcha.
it was right around then, yeah. But I don't have much experience at all with like cities and states and stuff. It was a cities. Yeah, I did one cities, and I was able to get top 8, and with a deck I'll never forget. I think you may know the player, Katron,
Yes,
I
yes,
think it's
yes.
called.
I think Catron. I'm honestly not 100% sure,
He has
but I'm
some
familiar
crazy
with him.
ideas, and back then he had this really cool. I think he was the one. This very cool like revenge style deck used different colors, and I loved that. I love boxes. I love different colors, and I'll never forget that cities. Yeah, it was such a cool experience to be finding the archetype that I love, getting into prizing for the first time, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like that's when I really realized I want to win at this game. I don't just want to play it. Um, yeah, and it was so awesome. And I remember cruising into top 8 because I picked the right colors to kind of hit for super effective. It was a Stunfisk and a Regirock that both, I think it's like a Retaliate style revenge. They get charged up with Metal Links, they hit super effective, and then right when I hit top 8, I hit a color I wasn't prepared for. I hit a Mega Sceptile, and I didn't have a fire thing. I remember thinking I could add a fire energy or two and play this Entei. It might have been the Rally Back Entei, or that might have come later, but something like that. And decided against it because I was like, I'm gonna hard counter this Evil Zort Gallade thing that's there, and I don't need that. And then that knocked me out right away. Couldn't do anything to Mega Sceptile. That was Chris Rosher.
Yeah, I will say I've looked at a lot of old meta decks, and Mega Sceptile is not one that I'm too familiar with. So I'm assuming it was not
very rogue.
Yes,
it was very rogue.
Well, so yeah, once you have rogue against rogue, you never know who's gonna win at that point. Did that kind of set you off with liking that style of deck, where having kind of like a box, being able to pick and choose the archetypes in the meta that you're going to choose to hard counter, and kind of taking losses to certain other ones and strategizing and metagaming in that way? What about that play style was so attractive to you?
It's it is tough to say. I don't know. It might be as simple as like shiny things kind of go burr. Like I like the different energy colors that early on we like learned that was bad. Like when we were all rogue players and we're trying to do too much. And so the first kind of competitive shift is like, okay, I need to make this more linear. I need to figure out it's got to have a game plan. What am I even trying to do? I need to take these prizes fast. And it was just kind of cool when you swings back and I'm like, well, no, there's this concept of rogue and you can do other things, and I don't know. So it's just I always loved playing different colors. I thought that was really cool. I was really attracted to like the it's like a fairy transfer. I wish I could remember. It was I think an Aromatisse.
Aromatisse, I think it was Aromatisse, yeah.
Yeah, that was so cool, moving rainbows around. I like that Vile Plume. The item lock wasn't what was attractive to me. I don't, but that was part of it. But playing the rainbows and Jolteon EX and like, was there a Glaceon? This Evil Tool. Like, yeah, I don't know. Different colored attackers. It could be the options, but we might segue into this later. I'm hesitant to just say it's having options because I don't like saying flower selecting. I don't like shady dealers. I don't know why. I go too slow. I think we should, kind of how players like to play the game could be its own thing a little bit later. But so it's not just that it's options, because I think I can get overwhelmed with the different kinds of lines, and that's why I've said Trinity Nova so much and not flower selecting. Yeah, I don't know. Those early like meta links to revenge attackers or like that Vileplume box, it was like it's that combination of having options, but I kind of like picking my attacker that's good in match. I like having different attackers for different matchups. That's got to be what it is. It isn't as much so many different kind of lines and so much. I think they call it tutoring, like deck search. I don't need all that. I can see that's obviously a very big part of certain formats and certain decks and stuff, and that's great. And players should not shy away from making hard decisions. I just felt like that didn't mesh too much with me, and then especially as time becomes a factor, you just need to find that right mix of the amount of decisions you feel you can handle per turn that you want to tackle, and I guess just kind of a revenge style box checks that for me.
I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, if maybe like my assessment of this is kind of like totally off. It does feel like it's not like you like necessarily simple decks, but it feels like your mentality with approaching the game and choosing your deck is that a lot of the difficult decisions you make are made before the tournament, like picking your deck, picking what you're going to counter, picking what you're willing to lose to, and kind of building that flow chart of what a game is going to look like for you, as opposed to having all those difficult decisions happen in game every single turn. Like once you're actually in game, you know what the game plan is. But I'm sure that building an Arceus deck or building like a revenge style deck, a lot more thought is going into every single energy type you're going to be putting into your deck, as opposed to certain other archetypes where the decisions are in game. Is that kind of like an accurate assessment of kind of how you like to build your decks and approach the game?
I think so. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that has me kind of looking inward a little bit. I like it. I think definitely. I think I often am in my group chats kind of saying like, what do you want to respect? Like that's a lot of this is a quick segue. Just people can always DM me on Twitter and stuff. I love talking Pokemon, and why I'm even thinking about this is because some random people reach out all the time when I happen to be probably way too active on Twitter, but people send me bad Arceus decks all the time, and that is not. I love it. I love it. Keep your bad Arceus lists coming. I'll talk
Hey,
about
I'm
them
one
all
of
day.
those people, so
I'm all about it. But so that's like one of the first places I go is like, what are you choosing to respect? Like Arceus decks, they Makani's top 8 kind of coined them piles, and it's like that's a funny joke, but you don't actually want to make a pile. Like we're not binder drop should be a term of kind of like jokingly endearment. You don't actually want to drop your binder and play what falls out. Like so, what are you choosing to respect was always one of my favorite questions, and it's like that that is 100% the reason I was able to have pretty dang deep runs, if I do say so, with Aggron and Lycanroc being in the top 40. At 1,200 person plus tournaments. Those two in particular are great examples of this. Like my friends tried to get me off those decks so much. They're like, play Palkia, like play something else. And I, God bless him, my friend Greg Day. He is like the only high level competitive player who lives so close to me. And I met him when I moved to Nashville. He comes over all the time, and we just play to stuff. And it's like become a joke of like, hey, beat this bad Arceus deck out of this idea out of me. He'll pilot a Lugia, pilot a Palkia, whatever, Mew through these different BDIF decks, and it's allowed me to. I'll tell him like, hey, play this meta deck or whatever. I can pick 5 that I think are going to show up, and make sure that I have these clear Arceus lines into them. And yeah, okay, Arceus whiffs energy turn 1. All kinds of stuff can happen, and it's like those lines are useless. But in a massive tournament, how big these things have gotten, there's a lot of rounds, a lot of time to get closer to statistically what I think should happen. And when I sit down with him and I'm like, all right, you're going to play 10 games, 15 games of Palkia into my Arceus Aggron. Let's see what happens. And when I was coming out favored to Palkia, I'm like, I know how to play this matchup. Like, so I just know I flipped over Aggron in the face of some Palkia players. And I just, this kind of is the last question, but also this new one. I grew to love that feeling of like, I've tested this into Palkia, a dozen plus times. I know you have not tested Palkia into Aggron at all. So like I have my lines mapped up. My turns are clear, concise. I know exactly what I'm doing. I probably won't misplay. Probably. I know how fast I need to be going. I know Austin went to scoop. You're guessing. You're like trying to figure out. You're like, all right, if he overbenches and misplays, maybe I won't, buddy. Like I have done this. I know. So yeah, what do you want to respect and yeah, put in stuff that you say you want to beat and just take some losses sometimes. I'm hearing that more out of a lot of YouTube videos lately, that it's like rounds of resources. These things are huge. We all want the 9-0. Believe me, there is nothing wrong with like thinking you broke it and you're going to play BDIF with these awesome, clever techs and you're going to beat everything. But you don't have to. Like 7-2 is awesome. Like you will not feel worse for having gotten into day 2, and it's tough, but I say that as a player who has yet to get to that top 16 or whatever, and that's maybe why is I'm okay with that. I've wanted to get into day 2. That was like my bar for so long. Now I feel a little more comfortable there, and I'm like, okay, now what do I do once I'm there? Maybe I do need to change the mentality, but I don't know. I'm not quite there yet because I felt like I could have done it with the Aggron, with the with Lycanroc, with Arctina at Peoria. It's just variance. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
No, that's a lot of really interesting points, and I think a really good example of that is just what we saw at EUIC, where we have Alex Szymanski piloting an Arceus, Arceus Duraludon, but a little bit of that Arceus pile energy was in there, right, with the Vulpix and the 2 Drapion and the Lumineon. So, he knew what he was going to beat, he knew what he was going to lose to, and I'm sure that every single game that he played, he knew that, like, this is my game plan. And I'm sure a lot of people did not know what their game plans were going to be against a Vulpix or against Double Drapion, right?
That feeling is awesome. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And on the other hand, we saw this with Alex and also with Tord, disrespecting Lost Box, right? A lot of players thought, Lost Box is going to convert pretty badly, which it did. And a lot of players just did not prepare for Lost Box, and they were completely okay with it. They took those losses in stride, and they made really good finishes. So, and sometimes you can make that decision and be completely wrong, right? Like you could say, I'm going to take my Gardevoir list is going to take an L to Lost Box, and you play 3 Lost Box, and you're 0-3, and sometimes it'd be like that. right?
Yep,
But
absolutely.
that's the decisions you have to make when you're deck building, right?
Yeah, I've chose Arc Malamar. I did really well at these. There's these really cool tournaments. I don't know why they don't do them anymore, man. Everyone here in the South loved them. The Card Trooper tournaments, they were early format 5Ks. So they would be done before sets are tournament legal, like 1 week before release date. And they were like quad state area. I mean, people were coming from so far. Top eight got this playmat plus, some share of that 5K. They were so awesome. And a lot of people were playing new cards. I think this was Astral Radiance. I knew Palkia was going to be huge, I think. But yeah, I got top eight with Arc Malamar, and I loved that deck. And so I played it into NAIC because I just thought we'd see a lot of, I wish I could remember exactly what I was trying to counter. I felt like there would be a lot of Palkia, a lot of Arc Intel. And just it played out just like that. I hit so much. NAIC is so big. I hit so much weird stuff, so much weird stuff, and I'm stoked. I got points. I hit some amazing players, and it was just an awesome experience. I'm very grateful for points. It's a finish I'm proud of. But I felt like it was the call, and I was going to get so lucky with my matchups, and like it was crazy what I hit. I don't remember, but I remember various like VMAXs and just really wild stuff.
Yeah, that's kind of obviously the detriment of playing box style decks where, you will beat, 3 out of the 4, tier 1 and tier 2 decks, and then you have an auto loss to Dialga, right? Like,
Yeah. It's so funny. Right now, my arc pile is like a random one that some people will be playing. The new Dialga thing with Magnezone, that's one of them that can just like sweep a lot of Arceus piles. But Arcanine EX too, for some
oh my
reason.
god, the Arcanine theme decks on the
So-
ladder, they're so
yeah.
annoying.
Yeah.
Now, you did kind of mention this, that cards that have you make a lot of just constant in-game decision making, like shady dealings, like flower selecting, isn't really something you tend to play. I was going to kind of say that, just looking at your finishes on Limitless, you had a lot of finishes with Buzzrock, and we can get to that in a minute, but we are now on the kind of current meta tangent, so I might as well just stick on that for now.
Sure.
Just looking at your finishes, you have Arceus Lycanroc, Arceus Aggron, Arceus Giratina, all, Arceus Giratina being still kind of a known Arceus archetype, but
Yeah.
Arceus Aggron and Arceus Lycanroc, and no Arceus Inteleon. What drew you to playing kind of those more unusual partners for Arceus?
I think I'm a new enough player. I'm not over that feeling that when I talk to some vets like Xander Vet, like they say it gets beaten out of you. We're like, you don't need to play something cute, rogue, that'll get people talking. Like you don't have to do that. An impressive finish with Palkia and some cool trainers for like that's maybe bad. Like I don't know. I'm just not over that yet. I just love the feeling of playing something a little unique, and it definitely, a big part of it is what do you want out of a tournament run, out of a season, out of your quote unquote career as a player. Feels a little silly to call it that sometimes, but and for me, especially this season, don't get me wrong, I really want my invite. I'm not going to Worlds, I'm not going to Japan. Just money, I can't swing that doesn't make sense. But I really want my invite. I got addicted to that after the first time. Something about just saying it. I'm proud of myself when I say I've gotten my invite. It's not enough that I went out to locals and just got some points. It's like, no, I earned enough to play with the best. I like saying that. So I do want my invite. That's not to say I don't want to be competitive. But for me, I just get so much more fulfillment when I play something a little more out there, and not just the rogue thing is cute. A big part is what we had already said. Also, I love when I sit down and a player hasn't tested into my deck 20, 30 times. You'll see in my Pokestats or Limitless or whatever, I played Lugia at I think Orlando, and it was fine. I went 5-3-1, strong start. I was 5-0, and I hadn't done that ever in my Pokemon career. So I was like, oh, this is what it's like to play a meta deck. And for a minute, everything I thought and believed to my core, my identity as an Arc Chad was like thrown into question. I'm like, am I gonna just be a Mew enjoyer from now on, a Lugia enjoyer, a vanilla? And I'm just kidding. I'm not saying anything is wrong with those great decks. You are a good player for choosing good decks. but I was like, oh, this is just what it's like when you've had experience. I'm a decent player, and I'm playing a meta deck. It goes good, and then the last 4 rounds, I had never seen such a fall to go 5-0. I was like top 30 seeds or whatever. I mean, I felt so good, and then it just the right mix of things that kind of countered Lugia, if you could. It was a Reggie's that got the turn 1 E-Rope, a lucky KO on my lone Lugia, and a control player got my tie, and then Eternatus, where I played Cologne. I felt good into that, but it was like, man, Judge, Sinnoh, and a Weezing. You can look at your hand, you're like, I can't do anything. Just the right mix of counters, and to go from 5-0 to 5-3-1 and bubble out of points because that one was so big. I was like, I just don't need to do this. Like, I don't need to. When you have such deep runs to show for yourself, like with the Lycanroc or something, I picked something I had so much more fun with, and that's not to say I just played a bad deck and was thankful to do well with it. Like, I put more hours into Lycanroc. I would wager than anyone. I would love to talk to pick. I talked to a few players. There are a few players in the UK who ran really deep with Lycanroc VMAX. But that Aggron, like, I didn't pick something goofy out of my binder. I put a lot of time into it and decided that was a tech that could do really good things in a certain meta matchups. But yeah, so a combination of how I feel when I pilot those decks that are a little unconventional, and then especially the what I was saying with Lugia is, like, I sat down, I flip over Lugia, and to know with every fiber of my being, when I sit down from a good player, Tyler Matthews, he was a Lost Box player who beat me in round 6 at Orlando. And I don't remember my tournament run. I remember him because he was so good. He got top 16 at UIC.
He beat me at a 1K this last Saturday.
Oh, he's good, dude. He's very, very good.
Very good.
And yeah, just I could feel it. I'm like, he has played the Lugia. He knows exactly every turn what cards he's looking for to beat Lugia. And again, to go back, it's like, I know no player says, I know exactly the cards in my deck I'm looking for to take down this Aggron VMAX. Like, so he played like it was like when you said flowchart. I mean, it's like he was on autopilot. He knows exactly what to do into Lugia. And I, to be fair, I did too. Like, I don't pick a deck because I don't know what I'm doing. It was into Lost Box. I have I played Skyla and Cologne, and I was like setting up the Boss Manaphy Cologne plays and Raikou, and it was okay. We went 1-1 in the series. It could have went either way, but yeah, that was just a big shock. 5-0. He's my first loss, and I'm like, oh damn! Like, good players know exactly what they're doing into this deck.
I think that's like a big lesson to learn for anyone who's interested in kind of playing more. Not even necessarily rogue, but just like underexplored archetypes. Like, you do need to put that work in, right? Because even though obviously you were able to get a lot of success with Arceus Aggron, Arceus Lycanroc, that doesn't mean that the average player can pick up Arceus Lycanroc and have a 37th place level finish at another regionals, right? They need to put that work in, because the deck is a little more unconventional for a reason, right? So you do need to put that work in, and you obviously can get rewarded by it, but Definitely. You're not necessarily encouraging people to just like play whatever you want. Like, you clearly have put the hours in the games in.
With those ones in particular, if I may real quick, I definitely did. I mean, yeah, those ones are such good examples. I feel like, I wish I could convey it stronger. That like in Rock, I mean, I was driving my friends nuts because like they want to test, into Mew, Palkia, whatever. And I'm just like, I'm telling you guys, like, I play into this. I need to do this more because I'm serious. It can do this thing. And God bless a few of my friends who were like, put up. I say put up with it. It's like they, you. Once it starts showing results, you'll have friends who are like, oh dang, is this the spice? They want to know too. And so that's not to say it was fighting tooth and nail to get them to test into my thing, but they obviously know, if we're talking how many percent of whatever deck am I going to hit in a tournament round, safe to say they're going to hit 0% Lycanroc VMAX.
Yeah, they know one's they want to test against Mew, right? They do
stuff
not want
they
to
know
test
they're going
to Lycanroc.
Yeah. So I just mean it's just to say about that, about a player who maybe wants to pick up some more unconventional things. You have to definitely it's just a little bit of a process. I don't know. You got to find. I mean, ladder just doesn't do it. That can be. You don't know anything about the caliber of player. You're finally into a good game, and someone just goes completely AFK to go cook dinner, or they're just stalling the clock out because they're frustrated. They hit the Lycanroc VMAX on ladder, or like. You got to find good friends who are willing to do that and make sure your testing is worthwhile. And you also, if an idea isn't working out, I mean, don't stick with it because it seems cool and rogue and it's your favorite Pokemon and you love Charizard or whatever. Make sure it feels lucrative. Lycanroc, Aggron, I picked those because of good players. That put that on my radar. Lycanroc VMAX, I think it was. I wish I knew. It was a special event or something over in the UK. A player got really hot with VMAX, like an VMAX, and I DM'd him and started asking questions. And then Adam Hawkins, his Aggron finish at Worlds is what made me pick up Aggron VMAX, and I felt like I could add some things to the deck. I made a couple changes. Collapsed felt awesome because it took a rough Reggies, and so I added Collapsed. He didn't play that. But so I also want to put credit to those players. I wish I could remember the UK friend's name, but yeah, I can't own that I came up with those, but before you go chasing down a rogue thing, make sure it's lucrative, worthwhile.
For sure.
If you're going to take it to a major, that is.
Definitely. And I think you also kind of alluded to this, but like people don't always realize how many games you've played with decks that just had to be put back on the shelf that will never see the light of day. Like Makani Tran, like I can only imagine how many cards he has tested for that archetype that we do not know about because they did not work. There's a lot of work that goes into building archetypes like that and preparing for tournaments like that, and not every player is up for that kind of testing.
Definitely, in looking at that one in particular, like the Cry of Destruction evil tools he had in there, the ponchos, you also it's like a, I don't know, the testing is a skill based thing as well, like because you've got to it's not super intuitive. I mean, because like those techs he tested, and you need to be weighing constantly, is this the surprise factor that I'm winning of, best 2 of 3 once it's a known quantity in after the game 1, can they win the back 2 just by playing around that tech? Can a good player see lines that my buddy can't, or maybe your player's a great player and you feel like you can play to beat the average player, or I don't think that's ever the move, but I just mean with those, like looking at like a quote unquote pile especially, that's just tricky to decide. Is it the surprise factor that's going to carry me? I don't know, top players talk and best 2 of 3, that can only do so much. Can you've got to you've got to work hard to figure out, is this actually a checkmate scenario that this card increases my win percentage? I don't want to say autos, it probably doesn't exist, but does this increase my win percentage by enough, even if they know it or don't know it, to make it worthwhile, both testing and then executing and bringing it and playing it?
Definitely, that's a massive point. I do kind of want to move then to the current format. I guess post rotation, we've had it for about a month now, so just the current, the Scarlet Violet format, right? And especially with some of the interesting cards we've seen that we're going to get with Paldea Evolved coming in for NAIC. How has your testing for that been looking? I know Alex Szymanski won EUIC with an Arceus deck. Are you still looking to kind of continue the innovations and maybe counter some of the counters to what he's been playing against, or have you been looking in other directions based on your experience with decks so far?
And do you mean either like Hartford, Portland, still this format, or both, or just onto like NAIC and beyond Paldea Evolved?
Oh, both. I just meant,
Sure.
we're definitely...
Just post EUIC.
Yeah, in general, like the Scarlet Violet format, and then maybe looking ahead, what has been on your radar?
Yeah, well, I've been around enough. I like some of my ideas. I think I'm okay and creative, but I don't try to reinvent the wheel. I just would love to say to anyone, like, invest in some content creators that you like, a coach, something. I so happily pay for Alex Szymanski's Substack. I have no issues shouting him out and telling everyone to pay for that. So often he talks about his ideas that then he executes and plays. I mean, there's nothing. It's as straightforward as it sounds. He's a great player. It sounds like he's just talking his thoughts in real time, and he's eloquent. And it may be a part of it that I grew up playing with him in Michigan. I loved the Szymanskis, a ton of respect for them. But he himself has said in plenty of places that the Vulpix deck may not be the best moving forward. It's relatively easily countered by Guardy. That is to say, I think there are still ways in Arctur of Vulpix, or like Braden Elfert style. I don't know how to say his last name. Braden's like 12th place Arc Vika Pika deck. Those things can adapt. It just depends. If I know Guardy, so like Vulpix, for example, is in there for Guardy and some other things, but players have talked about how simple it is to boss Memskip Roxanne. that kind of a thing into Vulpix. Well, Camo Poncho just stops that. So Braden's, if you can think you can predict how Guardies or others may adapt, I'm testing a ton of different funny cards. That exposes my hand a bit. I think Alex's could adapt with a couple ponchos. I don't know what the cuts are. Every cut makes it worse in some other matchups. So again, it goes back to like, what do you want to respect? But I think ponchos are insane. They can just reverse orders of like E-Rope then boss around, but still sometimes just that I feel like that poncho on the bench, just 2 attackers, Vulpix in the active, poncho on the bench, could keep your Vulpix attacking. You just need to get to 4 prizes, and then it doesn't even matter. What else? I just think, yeah, it could have a place. This is probably not the time for Vulpix. I think do something probably different. I know a few of my friends have been trying Umbreon. I've been trying Umbreon. Still like Quad Lost City instead of kind of Vulpix. I'm going to be invulnerable. You just raw aggression. I'm going to Lost City every Ralts I can, and if I go first and I'm Lost Zoning like a Curlia Ace, I don't. Just that's been insane. So it can surely adapt. We're gonna see it. Arceus, I think the meta's slowed down enough that Arceus, the V-Stars aren't getting KO'd right away like they were in like the Palkia and Mew format. So I think there's certainly a place for some style. We're definitely gonna see them, these different arc boxes and arc partners. But yeah, as far as Vulpix, I don't think that's the one. I think that's too on the radar. And like I was saying, my point I was going to get to there, you want to be able to maybe anticipate how they're going to tech. What would be the tech for Vulpix? And it's a little too wide right now. Guardy's a little too good, and you don't know what they're going to play. Their plan could be just a bunch of like gust effects, like E-Rope and multiple bosses and stuff. It can be Mimikyu EX. It can be a path of their own. There's a little too much, and so yeah, trying to cover a bunch of bases just for the Guardy matchup, just to get beat by a Guardy anyway, that sounds bad. So
yeah, there are definitely points where you have to kind of like cut your losses and just realize like, for now I have to put this on the shelf, and obviously the meta always goes in circles. Like sooner or later the Guardies will, for all we know, at Portland, there'll be no arc decks doing very well, and everyone's going to forget about Vulpix, and it'll be right back for the next tournament. So that's always how it goes. The meta goes in cycles.
Yeah, and then regarding Lugia is the same boat of Gardevoir. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, Pikachu and Dura both were like such easy answers for people who loved that card and were looking at the matchup to Lugia and top players. I think we were all just little traumatized from Silver Tempest format. Lugia was still so broken to a lot of us. I don't know if anyone remembers that perception, but like we all, I don't know, it seemed on socials, content creators, we all knew Lugia was still really good. We're all seeing the Japanese results, like Lugia's still great. And I think, yeah, players I think we overestimated it a bit. Like like those who piloted it thought it was the best, and there were some other the bests as well. And so yeah, it just got pretty predictable, but now you don't know what the Lugias can have, these different like single strike boxes that, I think Jose Marrero, maybe I saw a list of like, he was up to like 2-2 Dura, and they can have 2-2 Dura, 2-2 Urshifu, any combination somewhere in there. And between those two guys, they've got shred effects, they've got invulnerability. So just like the Guardi example, it's like, if you want to try to predict how vanilla Lugia adapts to your techs, I don't think you can. I think they're a little too all over the place. So I don't know how you would adapt an arc pile and go like, oh, now I beat Lugia, because what does that even mean? Lugia and Dun, Lugia Urshi, they're different things, and yeah. And maybe you go so far down those rabbit holes, then you lose to this more consistent vanilla Lugia again. I don't know.
Do you have any thoughts on Paldea Evolve? Have you been looking a bit at Japanese results, or are you still kind of focusing on the meta we have right now?
No, I've been splitting my time evenly. I really want a good finish at Milwaukee, so I'm making sure weekly to play a lot of games. I've got Saturday I'm hanging out with a buddy and playing a lot of different Arceus combinations. Josh Hatter on Twitter, awesome guy to follow, shares incredible creations, but he just shared this Arceus Umbreon Greedent VMAX list that I just have to try. I don't think it's going to be, I think there's plenty it loses to, but it beats anything 60 HP, 70 HP, and that's purple. I mean, it definitely does. It's got the gloves in there. It takes 3 prizes every time it kills a Ralts or a Comfy. So I'm playing that. So I'm focused on this format. Clearly some goofy things. I also am on some more like straightforward with clear intent arc piles. I'm really on Palkia right now. I like that, like Arceus Vstar right now. So I'm playing those things. I'm definitely looking onward as well. I love Ting Lu. That was my favorite legendary of those. I don't know what they're called, like the Ruin something. Uh, Ting Lu was my favorite, and he seemed so bad at first. I wasn't seeing any results. A lot of American content creators were saying like there's nothing there, and now we're seeing him be in some like City League top eights and stuff, top fours, and taking down one list that won this one I saw that was like 120 something people, and so I love Ting Lu. I think it's countered like you could be playing Ting Lu in a way that beats what you think is Specs caliber, but I already have friends because of my Ting Lu-ness talking how they could play a path that would shut off Ting Lu. They could play a canceling cologne. If their Baxes are damaged, they cologne my Ting Lu. I mean, now they can, deluge or whatever it's called. So there's a lot of text for Ting Lu. I don't love that. Gosh, I wish I could put Arceus and Judge Path down, but we get Iono, and Iono Path sounds fun, and there's plenty of good Arceus. So I'm still looking there. There's this new Archetype of Coco VMAX Pika deck that's doing pretty well over there. Panic Masks and Iono Path. That sounds so fun and crazy. Arctina's still killing it over there. So those are the things I'm paying attention to. I don't think I'm picking up Guardy. I have it all sleeved up, ready to go if my friend tells me this is the broken Guardy list. Next format I'm talking. I don't want to play it right now. I don't know what that is. Maybe I'll try it. But next format, I like the idea of the Charm and the Drifloon. That seems really cool. But I would love to try to beat it instead. That's clearly really good, and I think I could make something that could be pretty favored into that. And I think if you could do favored into just to say my mindset, I want to be in a position come NAIC that if it seems like Guardy and Bax are the things to beat, or Shine Pow, whatever you want to call it, are the things to beat, I would love an arc pile that is favored into those. That's what I'm trying to find. If that doesn't exist, whatever, but that's where I'm at. And then for fun, I'm still playing Ting Lu, because Ting Lu, man, VIP pass, acro bikes, what are they called? Trekking shoes, pickaxes, you fly. And then Squawkabilly, I mean, I've drawn 30 cards, I've set up 3 energies, and I Halucha pinged things they can't. I mean, like, it goes crazy fast, and that's a blast. But like I said, Ting Lu may just be too easily countered.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting archetype that I haven't even thought about the Cologne, because I was seeing I've been seeing not Ting Lu, but Bex Calbert Chen Pao lists that play Vulpix of their own, that play Palkia, and I was like, oh, that kind of counters being ability locked for a little while. But then you're a different Cologne. So yeah, there's a lot of back and forth.
Wish, and I didn't come up with that. I was boasting Ting Lu. I was untouchable. This friend group was listening to me. I'm like, bro, Ting Lu this, Ting Lu that, and my buddy's like, I'm really on Excalibur. I'm just gonna grab Cologne. And my head exploded. I was like, it's that easy? He's like, yeah, Fort Irida, bro. Like, I just grab it. And if you don't play like Gape Bog, I don't even know if that sequencing is right, but if Spiritomb, they could just Luminion for Irida, for Cologne, and then they're just off to the races. I'm like, dang, Ting Lu is easy to stop. That sucks. And it's all abilities too. So like Vulpix, and Vulpix fits so naturally into Shine Pow, and Vulpix would just shut down Ting. And sure, Ting can play E-Ropes or something, and maybe its own path, I don't know, for that. But it can't OHKO the Vulpix easily, so without that E-Rope boss KO potential, I don't know. Clearly, I've come full circle. If you talked to me last week, I would have been like, brother, Ting Lu is broken. But now I'm sadly finding it's not as broken.
that is unfortunate. But I mean, NAIC is basically just like the first tournament of the format, right? Like, it's just like the on release. It's like the release weekend, isn't it?
I would like to look at the calendar again. I thought it was about, I don't know. A friend of mine said we will likely have some online data. He felt there's going to be some tournaments beforehand, but yeah, I mean, it's right there. It's very close. I mean, yeah, it might be the first IRL one.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm sure we'll have those like 2 weeks of it being online. But and I guess we saw that a little bit with Peoria last year, where when Lost Box came out, within those 2 weeks we had, from Lost Box being the BDIF to everyone countering it, to Lost Box playing 4 Colognes and 4 Paths. So, who knows how the meta will evolve in just those 2 weeks. But, there's always a possibility that you could play Ting Lu and just hit right at that cycle where nobody's playing Fruit Basket and you just cruise on to day 2.
Oh yeah, and that's a great point. So that's also what I've said in a few group chats to my friends. It's like I still love that I'm testing it. It's a blast to play. It's a cool archetype, and when it's totally new like that, we'll have to see. When it comes time for NAIC, I'm very curious. I'm going to be watching very closely what content creators are pushing, what we're seeing on Limitless, because yeah, the Chine Pow players, as an example, they've got to decide to play those cards into Tinglu, and NAIC being huge, there's proportionately probably a small amount of players paying attention to like Japanese or Limitless. Those are the ones I want to be good into, of course. I don't want to not respect the good players that I'm hopefully going to win up into. But there could be a huge section. There could be enough of players that I don't feel that are playing. Yeah, the Cologne, the Picnic Basket, the stuff to beat the Tinglu. That I'm like, hey man, if just this week Celio and LDF and Shuffle Squad all said like this is the Guardy list and it's straightforward and it's so good and everything and Chime Pow and they've got lists for these things and they look vanilla and cracked and I'm sure they're great, but it's like dang, my Ting Lu beats a vanilla Guardy and a vanilla Chime Pow. I might be rolling with Ting Lu because they have the surprise factor. I mean, when I played it into a buddy, I've got them all proxied up and I went to a League Cup last weekend and I was like, hey, you want to play Chime Pow? And he was all excited. I'm like, let me play Ting Lu. Tinglu beat it 3 times because I didn't put counters in the Chime Pow yet. I need to do that now because he's like, wow, I think Tinglu might be actually good. And then, yeah, it's just he was eager to play Chime Pow. He'd been looking at cards, like he knew what they did. He's a great player, but just that totally new mechanic of not quite putting together how Tinglu works because you haven't had to. That's no fault to anyone. It's just like if you just didn't look at it because you're playing this game currently as you should. Yeah, man, they flying entry 2 of your things, and before you know, you're like, wow, I can't Excalibur this whole game. How am I gonna play the game?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of just like little things with those decks that like you do just need like real practice with them before you realize it. Like, I found I was able to like scour the internet for this like random because I've been a big Chenpao believer the last couple weeks, and I found this like a Japanese article kind of going over it, and they were saying like, they I think for their tournament they played 1 regular energy retrieval instead of all superiors, and they were like, well, early game if you're just Greninjaing twice, like you don't want to waste two cards and superior energy retrieval 2 energy. And I'm just like, oh, like
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. But like you wouldn't necessarily catch those like little decisions with deck building unless you've actually like been really playing the deck as opposed to play some games online. My cards came in the couple days before NAIC. Let's see how it goes, right? Like,
Yeah. That's a crazy point. That has me thinking. Like, it's so cool that we're in this day and age. I mean, I'm able to translate tweets and communicate with the Japanese player, or find these lists. We're not just playing like early deck lists. We're playing like refined lists. That's so wild. I hadn't quite connected that. That yeah, I mean, like the Tinglu I would have put together after reading the cards is a joke compared to the one that I'm copying now. That is like that player went through that action, fleshed it out week to week, and he was probably the '03 drop Tinglu player and found that the e-retrieval of that deck, like because I remember early Lugias. Me and my friends, I have it still in my notes maybe somewhere, like the worst Lugia deck I've ever seen, and it's I don't know, that's just so interesting. Yeah, that it's crazy how things have changed, how fortunate we are to not just copy an early list like that, but that it's like refined, and it's crazy how fast things move, man.
for sure. I mean, don't even tell me about like early Lugia. I remember when I first saw it, my first thought was like, oh, like Arceus isn't even that good. You're gonna be getting out 2-bit barrel. It's gonna be so good.
Yeah.
And then I found this old list I made that I sent to a friend. I was like, dude, it's like a 2-2 Lugia line. You get to set up all of your rapid strike attackers, and I'm just like, what? What's wrong with me? Like Yveltal one shot everything. What was I thinking? Just
Yep.
it's
Yeah,
funny.
the amazing rares, they seem like a joke. I can remember that driving home. I mean, like that didn't seem real. Like, oh, you could play any energy you could do. That didn't seem real. And yeah, yeah, it's interesting. It got so refined where it was like broken.
Now, moving on a little bit, because I know we've just had a whole lot of discussion about like future format stuff and current format stuff, which hopefully people found very enlightening. Before we kind of start getting to our wrap up, I do want to touch on a pretty important subject for you that I will say I'm not super familiar with the background and the story behind this. I know on Twitter one of your pinned posts is about your kind of history with powerlifting, some like health stuff you've gone through, and how Pokemon's been a big factor in helping you kind of get to where you are now as a person. Now I don't want to assume anything about what you've gone through in your life. Could you tell us a little bit more about that and share that story with us?
Yes, I'm so thankful you wanted to, because I do this not to talk about myself, I promise. I just watch so many players and people. You just Pokemon community is so big. I know plenty of you have had these crazy moments in your life, these close calls that make you be able to be better at checking in and taking stock of what you do have in your surroundings. And yeah, this story was that for me. I found this weird sport, powerlifting, when I was 24, 5. I don't know. It was like 3 years ago now, 2 years ago now. And I fell in love with it. And I can't explain why. I did some team sports. I really liked rollerblading, skiing. I got into the gym space. I liked fitness. I liked getting a little better every day. But I hated dieting. I hated this, like, how shallow it all felt when I got in. I ended up discovering bodybuilding, and I hated it. It got me eating, such a small amount and feeling like trash. And so that is its own point that, hey, please let everyone understand fitness is not about eating less. It's a celebration of what your body can do. It does not have to be about looks. So that I started to put those together and get away from vanity, move to powerlifting. I was like, oh, it's all performance based. It's not like, oh, that guy looks better than that guy. He moved more weight. And I love that. And there are weight classes, so I don't need to compete against a behemoth, a Hulk. It's like I'm competing against other guys my weight. And more than that, I got the chance to watch a powerlifting meet. And they were celebrating guys, you get third place or whatever. You didn't beat first or second, but everyone is rooting for him and cheering for him because he's hitting a personal best on the platform in front of everyone. It was such a cool experience. Loved the sport. So I paid for a coach as I fall in love with it more and more. I did a powerlifting meet. I loved it. It was so cool competing. My parents there. I decided I'm going to compete again. I'm getting stronger over time. I go into the doctor because I'm feeling a little lethargic. I think it's something hormonal, WebMD or some silly rabbit hole online tells me it's my hormones. So I get into an endocrinologist. He looks at my heart. He's like, your heart is racing. Are you on amphetamines? Blew my mind. I mean, I was self-proclaimed straight edge until 21. I was like, what are you talking about? And this was a new doctor. He didn't believe me. He was certain I was on Adderall, cocaine, something. And I'm like, my guy, I had a monster 4 hours ago. Like, I don't touch anything like that. He couldn't believe me. We get hooked up to an EKG and end up doing an echocardiogram. That's an ultrasound of your heart. And my heart was somewhere near 200 BPMs, racing. And when they look at it with the ultrasound, they find it's severely compromised and failing. I ask him what that means, and he's like, it's about 10% of where we would want it, what it should be. It's severely enlarged, and you are at risk for a heart attack at any moment. It's miraculous you've been able to lift in the gym. You should be getting lightheaded when you walk up a hill, when you get out of bed. And I was completely asymptomatic at this time. I had just actually competed in my second powerlifting meet. I just got off the platform, and I was in that doctor within a week or two after. So I just pushed my body to its, like, quite literally the most peaked it in a way I never have before, only to find out, I mean, I could have died right there, heart attack. So that was crazy and scary to hear. It didn't feel real. I called my parents, were talking about it. I get into the doctor, they admit me because they're going to do this procedure to fix it. And still to this day, I don't know, with their help, we don't know what it was. They think something genetically led to a small imperfection, a small irregular beat. And over time, that small irregular beat just caused a little bit of mayhem, caused my heart to form, enlarge, to overcompensate for its reduced blood flow. And they said with the way I'd been lifting, clearly my body found ways to overcompensate. It's really a miracle how you can do that. I was admitted to the hospital for a week. The procedure they do is a catheter ablation. They're going to go in, what they think is, so the genetic, the irregular heartbeat stuff, that all contributed to make it enlarged. They think they can fix the rhythm. That's what they're going to try to do. I have a node in my heart that's sending conflicting electrical signals. They're going to feed a catheter up through one of my arteries. This may be a trigger warning. I don't know. It's a much. They're going to burn off a node in my heart. I'll just say that, and they're going to
without getting into the
sorry,
describing this procedure. No,
you're
good, but just a warning for anyone listening, of course.
Yeah, they're gonna get my heart to have one electrical signal as it should. They tell my parents it's simple. There's not going to be any complications. It's a 2-hour procedure. I end up having some complications. It takes 4 hours. I think, I had it easy compared to my family waiting in the waiting room who were told it's going to be 2 hours and I'm in there for 4 hours. I mean, they have no idea what's happening. They had to wake me up in the middle of the procedure. I won't, of course, get into that either. It was horrifying to experience because, again, I've got stuff going on inside of me that they're trying to fix, and I'm awake. So truly a living nightmare, just an absolute nightmare. I come out of that, and I'm on the mend. I'm getting better, and I had come to love the sport, and I know a lot of listeners may be able to have something like this for them. Part of your identity. Pokemon is the best example. I don't know why I'm that's an oversight for me. It's a part of your identity. We are Pokemon players. I love talking about it. It's in your bio. And now a doctor tells me I can't powerlift, and that was that for me. It was a part of my identity. I was a powerlifter, and I can't. They tell me I can go in the gym and do some little things, but I had peaked. It's like someone telling you can keep playing Pokemon, but you can't ever compete in any CP awarding event. It's just a different thing. I don't know if I can transition. And I had played Pokemon. I took a break through powerlifting, and then refinding it again, refalling in love, and being welcomed by like the Nashville scene, some players I've met here. It was such a important transition and important. I don't know, just a lesson from that. I hope anyone could hopefully take is like you can always adapt. You can find other things, and yeah, even if something like that happens that just totally changes your life, like you can't let it. I could have so easily still to this day be thinking about what I can't do in the gym, but being so close to apparently having a heart attack on the platform in front of people, I'm so grateful that my doctor is like, you should still be going for a bike ride, you should still move. So be very grateful for your able body. Whatever you can do, celebrate it. Go for a walk with your girlfriend, walk your dogs. Just please, because I was asymptomatic. I had no idea what was happening, and all of a sudden, my life completely changed. That was surely all over the place. I tried to keep it pointed,
totally,
but it's
fine.
So it was an absolute roller coaster.
That is quite the story, and I genuinely appreciate you sharing it. Honestly.
Yeah, thank you for being open to talking about it.
Of course, you are very much appreciated in the community, and we're all very thankful that you are able to be with us and be a part of the community. Like you are very appreciated. I hope I hope you know that.
Happy to be here. Thank you very much. That is very kind.
I don't really know where to go from there.
Well, I would love. Hey, I can segue it real quick because you mentioned what could a player learn from me, or we talked about how could a player get better at the game. I think this segues from that. I think because to me a big word that comes to mind with that is perspective, and I think, like we said at the beginning, to come full circle, we're so hard on ourselves. A lot of competitive players, they almost feel like I don't deserve this variance. It's like a bad finish. Like there's like jokes right now about going 0-1 drop or 0-2 drop from a cup, and it's like that is completely like variance is the thing. Like you need perspective. When you sit down, if I could just really stress what a player could learn besides some kind of point from that story is like when you sit down, you need to understand that person across from you loves Pokemon. This would be my favorite point and takeaway at all if I were to share anything, is like if you guys met in a Starbucks line and you heard them talking about Pokemon, you guys would be best friends in that line. You would be so excited that you ended up in line by someone who plays the game competitively. And some players, man, I see it so way too much. It's completely lost on them, and they sit down and they treat their opponent like either like nothing, and that's whatever, but like sometimes with contempt, or like I'm competitive as anyone else, man. You cannot tell me with the powerlifting background, some sports, like I am. But also in a little bit, you change that context a touch, they would be your best friend. It is so weird that we all love this Pokemon game, and yeah, that just breaks my heart sometimes. Like my opponents from so many regionals, I talk to before every major now. Mo Makania was an opponent of mine, and I'm so thankful that we got to connect and talk. And Colin Mary Matthews, he was an opponent, and now we go back and forth on Twitter. I don't want to say like we're best friends, but even these Twitter friends, it's just that is the way you simply have to be. That's not to say they're mutually exclusive to have that openness, empathy, whatever, and still be ultimately in the zone, competitive, aware that they could cheat you. That but you can be above how they're going to act towards you. Just please have that empathy. Different circumstances, you guys would be best friends. When I sit down, I know my opponent loves Pokemon, and I know I love Pokemon, and that is a very meaningful connection that is never lost on me.
For sure. Like, as many people, as we hear, getting criticized for different, like, shady behavior at tournaments, I hope we're all aware that that is, like, by far the minority, and obviously, like, those stories get a lot of traction, but the average player you play is probably a chill person who loves Pokemon, who wants to play some games, and will hopefully be a good sport about, most of the games you play.
Definitely.
As we start winding down, are there any big events you're planning to be at? Where can people find you? How can they get in touch with you? How can they learn more about you? Any shout outs? Any of that before we start to wind down?
Definitely. I am going to Milwaukee. Really wish I was doing Hartford. Got some friends going, and gosh, I mean, I still could. Definitely Milwaukee. NAIC, unfortunately, those will probably be the last two. I'll be driving all over for cups. I'm in Tennessee, but I'm looking at Kentucky, Georgia a lot. I'm definitely going to be there. That's this. Sorry, I just had a complete like brain fog. Yeah, that's that. Please, engage with me on Twitter. I love talking Pokemon, like I've said. I may be in some Facebook groups, although Burbank City, too much exposure can completely melt your brain. Talk to me. I don't know. I try to be very extroverted. From now until August, you can find me in Tennessee at any cup. I'm moving to Florida, so I really hope to mesh into the Florida scene. I'm already looking at shops there. So if anyone has any recs or where I should be hanging out playing, I'll be like Melbourne, Palm Bay, very close to Orlando, or within an hour. I say very close, but Pokemon players, we like to drive. Yeah, and I'm a Nashville-based realtor. I wanted to include that as well. Anyone looking to buy a home in Tennessee, I'm your guy. Come fall, you're looking to buy in Florida, I'm your guy.
Yeah, obviously got to get those, business connections to Pokemon as well. That's what the community's here for.
You
We're all here to
mentioned
support each other.
I'd like to hope so. I mean, come on, you really want to deal with a realtor who's going to say their favorite Pokemon is Pikachu, and they say it wrong, one of them Pokemans? No, you want a competitive Pokemon player who also is very intelligent about the market. I will not steer you wrong. I'll do a great job for you. But when we're talking shout outs, I would be remiss if I didn't, again, talk about the awesome Nashville scene. We say Nashville, it's all over Tennessee scene. I'm so blessed to have met Drew Kate, Xander Bennett, my homie Greg Day, who I play with all the time, Arlo Neal. There's just so many. And my girlfriend who learned the game for me. She's been stuck because of an accident. So it's got her home a lot, and God bless her, she has picked up the game, done some matchups when I want to test, and she puts up with me when when I'm probably insufferable, going, no, you wouldn't do that. A good player would do this. We're gonna walk it back. I'm a horrible opponent, I'm sure, as she's trying to learn the game, but I'm so appreciative, and that's If you have a partner who will play like that with you, that's something special. I'm very thankful.
All right. Well, dude, thank you so much for joining us. This conversation was amazing. I really appreciated all your insights, your story, the lessons you have to share for us, the attitude you have towards the game, everything. Really just was amazing. Thank you so much for joining me.
Absolutely, man. I'm so appreciative myself. Can't wait to see you at NAIC. It'll be awesome to link up.
Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you to Harrison for being so generous with his time. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. If you're interested in hearing more conversations like this one, please consider giving us a follow, review, or rating wherever you're listening. If you want to follow us on social media, you can follow the podcast on Twitter at memcappodcast. Or if you want to see me post about my own TCG experiences, you can follow me on Twitter at RZGladys. Hope you have a great day, and thank you for listening.